Peace, fam. My name is Brother Nkosi. Welcome to Black Politics and Baseline Theory. The goal of this channel is to bring us back to what was, at least one point, a general consensus that we had come to during our previous stages of struggle. What does that mean? Why do I put it that way? Before I answer that, though, my thinking is that as adults, we should be able to take criticism, especially if the criticism comes from a place of love. Fam, the realities are of our political thinking, right, as it stands today, is that politically we've gone backwards. I really don't know any other way to put it. We're never all going to have the exact same political views. Political development is always uneven. That's a given. But we should have at least lessons of things that were learned from that which came before. Things that we would either build on or we could just go to as ready-made solutions almost, because most of the things that we deal with in this country are not new. It's a different time, yes, but they're not new things. They have their intensities at different moments, different pressure, but this is nothing new. We've been going through this for hundreds of years. And even that should be part of our baseline of understanding. I don't think we're always clear that this is the natural order of things. One of the things that I plan to try to do with this channel is to utilize technology. Not only utilize technology, but also utilize a scientific approach, and tools of analysis to help us have a scientific approach to the situation. Let me give you an example here. I want you to watch this quick video, and this is actually good for a good baseline of understanding. I took use artificial intelligence, AI. Everybody's talking about AI, right? So I took AI and I asked it a fundamental question as it pertained to Black people, because people are always saying, Black people saying this and Black people saying that, like people against you. They be trying to gaslight us and act like, there's no real discrimination, and they'll try to talk it away. But I asked AI, are we being paranoid? And this is what it came back with.
Short answer, no. That's not paranoia. It's pattern recognition. If you look at US history honestly, you can see repeated, documented, intentional efforts to block Black progress. Slavery wasn't just labor. It was a system built on law, religion, economics, and violence to keep Black people at the absolute bottom and to pass that status to their children. After freedom, Black codes and convict leasing were written specifically to recapture Black labor and control Black movement and political power. Jim Crow laws deliberately segregated schools, housing, jobs, transportation, and voting. That's not an accident of history. That's design. In the 20th century, redlining, FHA loan discrimination, exclusion from GI Bill benefits, urban renewal that bulldozed Black neighborhoods, school funding tied to property taxes, discriminatory hiring, and more. These are all policy choices that systematically advantaged white people and disadvantaged Black people. Police, FBI, and intelligence operations, like COINTELPRO, explicitly targeted Black organizers, from the Civil Rights Movement to the Black Panthers, to weaken Black political power and community self-defense. None of that is imagined. It's written in laws, memos, court cases, census data, and economic stats. Concern about a pattern like that isn't paranoia. It's a rational response to evidence. Where it can get tricky is how we describe it. It's not always one secret room full of people plotting, how do we stop Black progress today? It's more often a long chain of decisions. some openly racist, some neutral on the surface, but built on a racist foundation, that keep reproducing the same result. Black people having to run uphill with extra weight on their ankles. So, being aware of that history is not paranoia. Talking about it, studying it, organizing around it is not paranoia. It's actually a survival skill and a path to change, because you can't fix what you refuse to see.
But I think that at least at a minimum, in that 2 minutes and 30 some seconds, we have a pretty good foundation, or should have a pretty good foundation of what has been our history here, both past and current. I appreciate the information that other brothers and sisters come up with and give online. There's, I mean, just a ton of information out there. But I'm going to give some information too, but that's not my main focus. My main focus is not just to give information, but to give the tools of analysis of information, and so that it becomes not just information, it becomes knowledge. Information can be come and go. You can forget certain pieces of information. You may not have full context for information, but once the information is properly processed, it becomes knowledge. Most of what we get online can come under the category of what. To have knowledge, though, we have to start putting things under the category of why. And when we understand the why of the various things, then we begin to have true knowledge of that thing. I'm going to use a term to take the place of the word hate. I'm going to use the words negative energy. And the reason I want to use negative energy instead of hate, because hate has its own specific meanings and connotations, but the negative energy that comes our way is often mistaken for hate, and sometimes we approach the issue incorrectly because we've identified it incorrectly. So what do I mean? For example, you might hear people saying, yeah, man, people from the islands be disrespecting us and people from the continent be disrespecting us, man. They be like, yeah, man, American blacks here, they do this and they don't do that. And you might hear somebody from the Caribbean saying that and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm saying da-da-da-da-da-da because it's so insignificant that that's about all I can say. Man, I'm damn near 70 years old. And man, I've heard Jamaicans talking about black people badly back when I was in my 20 years old, 25 years old, early back then. And guess what? Black people be talking about Jamaicans too. So it's just one of those things, brothers and sisters. Don't just because it happened to make a video or something. It's nothing new, and it's not a big deal. In fact, why don't you do this? Let me give you a tool right now. I call it the 1 to 200 tool. All right, so at the top, number 1 is the things of concern, a black agenda for the survival of black people. That's number 1 in my book, okay? So down there at the bottom, we're going to put the number 200. Okay, so ask yourself this question. Anybody that might talk disparagingly of us, let's give that a number. Is it number 2 on the list? Can't take number 1. Sorry, that's already taken. But is it the second and most important thing we need to worry about? Or is it the 97th? Or maybe it's down there with 160. You put it in your on the list where you want it at. All right. But if it don't come up in the top 10, I think you need to let it go. All right. That's on me. That's called the 1 to 200. All right, that's what that list is called. Now, the reason that a lot of negative energy is encouraged to come our way is because those who actually hate us, so I want to make that demarcation, those who actually hate us do not want other people to gravitate to us because we have a tendency to influence other people, especially if they are oppressed people, and we have a tendency to influence them. I want you to see something right here for a minute, fam. Right here, you have a picture of the Black Panther Party, right? Okay, during that same period of time, the Mexican community was looking at what was going on in their community and suffering from many of the things that black people were suffering. And they looked and saw the Black Panther Party, and that inspired them to create the Brown Beret, right? And matter of fact, they would even work with the Black Panther Party sometime. You understand that we understood that we were not each other's enemy. You know what I'm saying? And we knew we wasn't no better than the other. We both was in the same party. Matter of fact, uh, here's a picture of some OG brothers and sisters from the Black Panther Party with some OG brothers and sisters from the Brown Beret. All right, chilling. But you want to see something really crazy? Look at these young white boys here. They were called the Young Patriots. Okay, they were originally from the Appalachians. They flew the Confederate flag, but not for the same reasons as people fly it for today. In fact, they hooked up with the brothers in the Black Panther Party and had a very good working relationship. Later on, they and other people like the Young Lords, Students for a Democratic Society, like I said, Black Panther Party, etc. They were the original Rainbow Coalition. Now, I don't mean that to be funny or nothing. I don't mean that as a joke. They were, in fact, the Rainbow Coalition, not what Jesse Jackson name that he gave his organization many years later. He actually borrowed that, I guess. We'll use the word borrowed from the original Rainbow Coalition. And if you look at them, man, they look like they 10 toes in and ready to throw down, right? I'm not going to say, brothers and sisters, that nobody else has ever fought back against the forces of white supremacy. I am going to say, though, unequivocally, that we have done it the best. We have been the most successful at it, and we have been the biggest thorn in the side of white supremacy since we've been here. At first chance we get, we had a slave uprising, even it was on the ship. If it wasn't on the ship, it was on the shore. First chance we got, Master's head was coming off as soon as possible. When you understand our historical relationship to this country, then what's happening today makes perfect sense. It comes in the perfect context as to why things are happening the way they are. Why is there these attacks on Black history? Why are there these attacks on anything that looks like Black progress? Why is it? Because that has always been the case on some level. Just think of going for yardage. I mean, at some point, they're always going for yardage. Now, it depends on what team is playing. Sometimes they maybe only go for a few yards, but right now, man, they feel like they can go for as much yardage as humanly possible. And if we understand it within that context, our whole existence makes sense. We understand why they've done everything they could to undermine us at every possible turn. Lastly, brothers and sisters, like I said, I'm not going to give people information overload. You'll have more information to add to the other information you got online. And I tell you, again, if you're not careful, it'll just lead to a sea of confusion. Again, what I want to be able to try to do as much as possible is to share the tools of analysis that were handed down to me and developed by brothers and sisters who struggled throughout the 60s and 70s. And we had to have like political education classes. We had to sit down and read. We had to sit down and study. So what I'm trying to do here is take and synopsize this, give it into small bite-sized chunks so that we can not just have information, but actually have knowledge. So I'm going to end on that right here. But before I leave, I do want to show you some of the tools that we will be using in the future. The next chapter, we're going to introduce these tools right here. This is the yin-yang symbol, but you won't see it with yin and yang on it. You will actually see it looking different. You'll see it with like this here: internal, external, political, historical, subjective, objective. And we're going to use those tools along with things like the 1 to 200 tools so that we can be better focused and not be so easily distracted and not floating around on a sea of confusion. So brothers and sisters, please subscribe and share this video so that we can kind of do something different than what we've been doing. Oh, almost forgot, fam. If you did stay this long to the end, congratulations, and here's your first brick on your baseline of understanding. Peace.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.